Hey everybody, welcome back to another super exciting Art of War Fix My List video. I'm guest starring today because we are fixing Chaos Lists.
That is right. I figured I'd bring in the expert, bring in the Chaos Boy himself, and oh god, he's a chicken now.
No, Fate Weaver's coming.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to bring in the Chaos Guy. We're going to fix up those lists.
That's right. Every single week we go through 3 different War Room members lists. You can become a War Room member in the link below. War Room members get access to all of our premium content like 3 coaching game strategy sessions, 10-minute tips, and our Discord channel where you can submit your lists to be fixed by your Lord and Savior, Mr. Jack Harpster, and our Art of War Coach of the Week.
I am the fixing lists god. If you do not, if you do not supplicate your list before me, I shall not deign to select it.
This is really going to your head.
It really is. It's great. I love it.
We should not have let Jack loose in the Discord.
Jack has his own show? This couldn't go wrong.
Well, I'm excited. This is my second Fix My List video. Last time we did Chaos. This time we're doing Chaos. I'm excited to fix some lists.
That's right. So today we've got a Death Guard list, we've got a World Leaders list, and we've got a Chaos Space Marine list. I know you've got some cool new fresh ideas.
I've got so many fresh ideas. So if you're here for the fresh ideas, do us a favor and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting us know what you thought. If you want your list submitted, you can check out the War Room in the link below as well in the description. But yeah, Jack, I'm excited. What we got first today?
All right, so first up we have the Death Guard.
The Death Guardians of the Galaxy.
And of course there's always the joke that the best way to fix Death Guard, I already saw a bunch of it in the Discord, best way to fix Death Guard is to add in some Plague Burst Crawls. Let's do it. That's definitely the joke.
Look, Death Guard definitely are not the strongest army in the game, but they can definitely try to be the best version of themselves. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help you learn the game, become your best. So let's just read this thing off the top.
Absolutely. So we've got Mortarion, we've got Lord of Virulence, along with Typhus, a Biologist Putrefier with Shamble Rot, a Chaos Lord with Deadly Pathogen. We've got 10 Plague Marines, big unit of them. Mm-hmm. And we got 10 Blight Lord Terminators, with 2 flails, 2 autocannons, and combi bolters. We've got 6 Death Shroud Terminators. We've got 20 Poxwalkers, a Rhino, a solo Beast of Nurgle, and 3 units of Nurglings. So what do you think about this list while I look up what the author has to say about it?
Absolutely. So long story short, the Mortarion is a staple in Death Guard armies. Lord of Virulence with Death Shroud Terminators is a great package. Usually that's coupled with 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, which I'm not seeing in this list. That's like they get +1 to hit, ignore hit mods, ignores cover. They start hitting, and then you have the access to that +1 AP strat. And that's really like the foundation of your damage, and Mortarion ignoring the hit mods altogether and basically keeping them safe as like a goalkeeper. I got that idea from Aiden Smalley, who we interviewed on the Art of War podcast, who's actually been doing 5-1 pretty consistently with Death Guard, which if you ask me means he's the best player in the world. But, we'll see about that. So what I'm looking right off the bat is this Rhino, 10 Plague Marines, Chaos Lord, and Biologist Putrefier. That's all going in one package, and that's a total of 450 points, give or take.
A little much.
It's a lot, too. Yeah, so what is that trying to do? I mean, it's not like a Chaos Marine Rhino, of course, so you can actually just shoot it. The Cloud of Fly strat just gives it stealth, which is a little less exciting. It hits okay. Like, Plague Marines have a lot of weapon options, and the Chaos Lord lets some W strats, and you have contagions, but I think for 450, you're just not getting any bang for your buck here, so I'm thinking that immediately becomes 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, and that I think would do a ton for this list.
Yeah, so the comments here is, I've been running this list for Death Guard for a while, and it's been falling short in games. Help would be much appreciated. Also, loving all the new content. In particular, Quentin is awesome.
That's great. Quentin is awesome.
I would agree.
I'm glad there's no underlying stipulations here about, like, I hate Plague Burst Crawlers, because that would have been an awkward taco.
All right, so we're thinking the Chaos Lord, the Biologist Putrefier, 10 Plague Marines, and a Rhino.
Goodbye.
All gone?
Goodbye. So,
okay, well, I do need something here to be
you can write
Plague Burst Crawler. You get to live, and the rest of these...
No, the question is really, do we run Flamers or do we run Entropy Cannons? I could be convinced either way, to be honest.
How many points is one of these things?
175, I believe.
I'll double check that, but 175. So the Chaos Lord, go bye-bye. I've got it all in the app over here.
We got the app going.
The application.
So I think we'll need to find more points. somehow. And I think the next thing I want to really look at is this Blightlord Terminator brick. Blightlords are very underwhelming. They're basically Terminators like everybody else's Terminators. The cool thing about them is that they're toughness 6, which is genuinely nice. There's a lot of strength 5 out there. But the challenging thing about them is that they're move 4, which basically means you have to rapid ingress them to do anything, which is okay. Just another hoop to jump through. The real challenge is that they are 1 damage pretty much across the board. The 2 Flails of Corruption do help with your combat capability, but you are combat garbage pretty much just through and through. And for 350, I don't think you can have a Terminator unit that's mediocre at shooting and mediocre at combat.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think so. Also, the list is over by 70.
Yeah, we're working on that.
So we do need to cut stuff. So even if it's like what you're saying is, even if it's all right, it might not cut the mustard at 350.
I despite the fact that we're over, I think they're terrible. We are over. This is where we're fixing points.
Is that
Press the delete button. Boop. Goodbye. Okay. So
Blightlord Terminators, unfortunately, at 350 just don't do enough.
They don't do nothing.
And you're not an army that can afford to have dead weight.
So, I do love 6 Deshraz joined by Lord of Virulence and 20 Poxwalkers joined with Typhus. I think that is some good stuff there. The 3 Plagueburst Crawlers is great. The Nurglings and the Beasts of Nurgle unlock your ability to, like, mission play and stuff. We have about 280 points left, and honestly, I'm kind of the mind to turn 3 of the Nurglings and the Beasts of Nurgle into another Lord of Virulence and just add 6 more Deshraz.
So just go like... Oh, that fits exactly, doesn't it?
Boy has
that's
eyeballs.
Typhus. Hold on.
Yeah.
There we go. So we got a second Lord of Virulence, we got Typhus, and we got a second Death Shroud Terminator unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you needed all of that, right? The triple Nurglings, triple Nurglings, and the solo Beast. That feels a little much.
Yeah. You are running light on stuff. One of the big things that Death Guard really struggles with is they sticky objectives, which means you don't actually have to camp your backfield. But you have to screen your backfield because everybody who's playing competitively has something that can deep strike or go in reserve pretty much, and that will just come in and take an unkept backfield. Now, a couple Nurgling units will just keep your backfield, but you'll still want some to maybe do action. So I kind of actually liked having 4 trash playing mission things.
Yeah.
I don't see a good way to get it in without cutting anything I actually want in this army. The Lord of Virulence with the Death Shroud Terminators is money.
What does the Lord of Virulence do for the terms?
That's a great question. I remember this was a package. Honestly, it's been a minute since I've watched it, read Death Guard. So he himself has a pretty good flamer. It's D6 shots, strength 5, AP 1, ignores cover, anti-infantry 2+ in twin length.
The funniest thing is he has a twin link gun and he makes his unit reroll wounds. It is very stupid.
But then what he does himself is he makes his unit, like you said, reroll wounds and then also ignores cover.
In ranged attacks, which the Death Shroud Terminators are surprisingly decent at shooting.
So what you do is you take the Death Shrouds and you have 6 flamers on them, plus the flamer on the Lord of Virulence is 7 flamers, and they have anti-infantry 4+ on those flamers, and now they're twin-linked, and then you ignores cover, and you can actually add AP with your stratagems.
I think the Sergeant can even take a second one, so you get 7, and that's a lot of flamage.
Yeah. And then there are 2 damage Terminators, so like they showed up to work in close combat.
Yep.
And Typhus and Poxwalkers, I think, is one of the best units in this army.
Okay, tell me about that, because I was about to ask.
So Typhus joins Poxwalkers. It's 20 dudes with Feeling of Pain. They have, like, mediocre stats. And then Typhus is, like, very good himself, especially at 115. And then every time Typhus kills a model, Poxwalkers come back to life. When Typhus is joined to a unit, they're -1 to hit in close combat. And it might be all the time, actually. I forget.
I'll double check.
And then he's also got a pretty good mortal weapon gun type thing, where basically you roll 2 up and somebody's taking mortals, and if you roll 6, they're taking a lot of mortals.
So they're -1 to hit in melee. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then he does blat a unit with an 18 with the Eater Plague. And on a 1, he slaps himself in the face. We don't talk about that. On a 2 through a 5, they take D6. On a 6, they take D3 plus 3.
Yeah.
And I believe that counts for the getting models back.
Yeah, I will. So Typhus and Poxwalkers, it's good objective control. I typically like to... The way I'm envisioning this army play is like Mortarion 3 Plagueburst Calls kind of jam up the middle with 6 Death Shroud Terminators. Maybe walking with it, but they're very slow, so maybe also deep striking both Death Shrouds and outflanking Typhus Poxwalker combo. And you're probably going to rapid ingress at least 2 of those units in.
Yes.
Then I just wish we had more trash, but overall, I'm very happy with this list. Maybe some cultists.
Do you think this
nice.
is the kind of thing where we only need 2 Plagueburst crawlers, or do you think that we need all of the good data sheets that we have?
I think we need good data sheets. I wish we can cut without it. I really do. What I think we could do, honestly, because I'm like frustrated with the amount of trash in this army, we can cut one of the Lord of Virulences and split a unit of 6 Death Shreds into 2x3, and that gives us a lot more. That'll give us points for Nurglings and Cultists, for a third Nurgling and Cultist. Cultists and Death Guard are very good because they scout. Scout lets you get onto those midfield objectives sometimes, and then start with the midfield and Contagion as an option, and then I'll start with the midfield Sticky as an option. And then...
Can they... Oh, because they can, because that's their army rule.
It's their army rule.
I was like, Death Guard cultists don't sticky. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
Everybody does.
So, that's... Having a unit of Death Guard cultists is just nice. I think, now that I'm looking at it, we just need more units, because we can't... There's no secondary plan. Like, we're not good at any of the fixed ones, and we're not good at tactical. So I think the way we fix that is by chopping the Lord of Virulence that we just added in there into Cultists and Nurglings.
Okay, so we need just more trash to play the mission.
Yeah.
And then
you don't have to divide a Death Shroud in 2, but I feel like without a character, it's kind of worth doing. And just use them as like 140-point skirmisher Terminators, the Deep Strike.
Okay.
I'm not married to that one, but I like 2 units instead of 1 if they're not character supported.
Do you think that they're like worth anything without taking a 6-man and putting the character? Or do you think... Because there's several units in 40k where, like, when you take them with everything, they're worth it. Yeah. But if you try and split them up, they're garbage.
I'm very torn. In my mind, they function very similar to, like, a 2-mana Lars Terminator unit, where it just, like, is fine. It's like MSU Terminators. It's not exciting, I'll give you that. But this army is Death Guard.
It certainly is. You can't take that away from it. Yeah, I wasn't very impressed with 2-mana Lars, honestly, playing with them, playing against them.
Yeah. I mean, you could leave it as a 6 and just not have a character and see how that does.
So the character just gives them reroll to wound in shooting, right? The rest of it's the same?
The combat's the same. The character's also decent in combat, but yeah.
The character does help in combat. I don't really see a way to get the character in without just undoing the change we did and taking the trash out.
Yeah. I think it really needs more trash.
Just stuff to play the mission.
Stuff to play the mission.
Yeah, because you got to have that balance, right? You got to have the balance of being able to damage the right number of things, being able to survive the right number of things, and then also being able to play the mission. Because if you don't get points, then you're not.
What's the point?
Then what's the point? Hey.
What's the points left on this army?
I believe 20. So if we cut a Lord of Virulence and we add in...
I'm hoping you say 35. If it's 35, we can turn a Nurgling into a Beast of Nurgle, and that actually has OC, which I kind of value here.
It's 20.
It's 20. I don't know if there's anything we can do at 20. You can probably find some enhancement.
I mean, we can look at that, right? Lord of Virulence, the enhancements you can take for 20, you can take Living Plague, which is +3 to his aura abilities. You can take a thing when your opponent fails Battle Shock. That'll probably come up.
Yeah, not that.
You can add 1 to his strength and attacks, and his range of an infected objective marker, you add 2 to his strength and attacks. And you can't take Shamble-Rot.
Okay, well, Shamble-Rot's a good one.
Shamble-Rot is a good one. It's -2 to charges when your opponent charges you.
I don't think that's worth reconstructing the army 5 points for. So I think we just take Living Plague and call it a day.
Yeah.
All right. I'm pretty happy with that. I think it's miles better than when we started with it. The Plague Marine Rhino package just had to go.
Yes.
That was, and the lack of Plagueburst Crawler, I think, was killing us.
Okay. Yeah, Living Plague takes it to, I believe, 130.
135.
Is it 120? Or it's 20, yeah. 120. 135. There it is.
And that's it.
All right. So that's where we're at here. Basically, the design decisions we made were we wanted to cut. There was a whole bunch of points in a Rhino with guys inside with characters attached, and it's very easy in 10th to get into that plan of stacking costs on top of each other until they get very, very high. It's very easy to be like, all right, this 300-point unit is going to have 200-point characters and go in a 200-point transport. I did that with my Black Templars. Actually, all those numbers were higher, but whatever. It's very easy to do that, and then you look at this 700-point package and go, what are we doing? Now, luckily, this one was only 400 points, but still, it's 400 points for a shell around 10 Plague Marines.
Yeah,
I'm not super
450
enthused.
really for like 10 Plague Marines, 2 characters. And you have to ask yourself, like, what is this doing for me on the table? And like, on its best day, it's trying to be a Terminator unit because it's way too expensive to be a skirmisher unit. It's not better than Terminators at it. And then when we're talking about Blight Lords versus Death Shrouds, that's really the only other decision point we made here is like, which one's better, you know? And you just kind of go through it. And despite Blight Lords being point for point cheaper, point for model, I should say, the fact of the matter is Death Shrouds actually do something.
Yeah, it's 280 for 6 Death Shrouds. I'm actually scared of that, which Death Guard need to reach hard for.
Yeah.
When you are playing an army that is weaker, and there will always be armies that are weaker, you do have to rely more on your units that actually do heavy lifting. So things like Plague Burst Crawlers, you don't get to be as cheeky as like an Eldar list gets to be because, you know, if 200 points of their army are fluff, their other 1,800 points are going to be fine. Mm-hmm. You don't really get that that luxury, so you do have to lean into your Plague Burst Crawlers, into your Death Shrouds, into your Poxwalkers, the units that actually do things.
So there's a lot of like wants I have for this army. Unfortunately, we're at 2,000 points, so that is what it is.
Yes.
The Nerdlings and the Cultists I'm not excited about, but you have to have something to play the mission. That's really what they're here for. And screening your sticky objectives is incredibly important, so someone just isn't deep strike right on top of them. The other element to this, though, is like, I forgot that if you join a character to 6 Death Shrouds, they're going to be -1 to wounded from higher strengths than their toughness. So that is relevant. But hopefully with some point decreases in a balanced data slate, I can only imagine they're trying to help Death Guard. I mean, like, please.
Please. Yeah.
I would like if, like, bloat drones came down. I think they're so close to being good. And I want them to be in this army because they fly. They move 10. They actually have decent stats and all that.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
They're just 135, and I can't do it. But
yeah.
I'm hoping with some points drops.
The thing to think about here is sticky objectives aren't so you can leave the objective. They're so that if your opponent shoots you off the objective, you still control it.
Right. So basically, I'm imagining you sticky your home field objective, and you plop 3 Nerdlings dead center on it, and then your army abandons this, but 3 Nerdlings do not. And then your opponent can't deep strike, even if they're playing like Genie Circle, they show up 3 inches away. They're still not on the objective. They shoot your Nerdlings off. Who cares? It's still your objective.
Yep.
Stuff like that, little tactical stuff, we teach in the War Room, and it goes a long way to getting the most mileage out of this army.
And that'll get you an extra 5 points. An extra 5 points is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Speaking of being in the War Room, Let's Talk Wargaming here has just signed up to the War Room. Thank you. Glad to have you in. And how do we submit lists to Fix? Well, you go into our Discord and you go to the Fix My List Submissions channel, and then you post your list up. And every week I go through and I select 3 lists out of there. We generally go by super faction, so I think next week I believe is Xenos. So you just post up your list, I'll troll through them, and I'll pick out 3 lists that I think are interesting or we can do something with. I do put an emphasis on lists that are going to events because I think that's very interesting to optimize for. And you just post your list up and possibly I pick it.
Yeah. Nerdlings can't hold objectives with OC0. We got a question chat, but let's say you start your turn with the Plague Burst Crawler on it. Now it's sticky. You drive your Plague Burst Crawler off and you put the Nerdlings on. It's protected by the Nerdlings. It's sticky from your Death Guard.
Yep. And Farno says, can we fix Jack's Thousand Sons list? I did.
Might need some fixing after yesterday.
I lost pretty bad on the scoreboard, but he actually almost got tabled by the end of it. I had Magnus get a 2-wound knight armature at the end. And
almost tabling is definitely what counts.
It made me feel better, that's for sure. I think I just needed to play it better. Don't blame the list. There are about 200 points I might be able to mess around with. But I want to learn the army better before I go
Thousands is a pretty skill intensive, so maybe not your first attempt at it. Expect success, but even Vic said on our podcast that we actually interviewed him on for the Outdoor podcast. Just be tenacious with it and don't give up. It is there if you learn it.
Yep, I've been talking to him. He likes where my list is at, and that gives me a lot of confidence. All right.
Nerdboi, hope you appreciate your Death Guard army. It was a blast doing this up for you. Very similar to Death Guard list that I like to run myself. But let's keep on hopping over. What do we got next?
All right, next up, we've got the World Eaters. So if you want to read out what's in it, I will look up comments from Conman234.
Conman234 is conning us into taking World Eaters to town today. We've got Angron, a master of executions with the Berserker Glaive, 10 Khorne Berserkers, 2x10 Jackals, a unit of 6 8-bound, 3 Exalted 8-bound, the Khorne Lord of Skulls, and a Rhino.
So this list is titled Choo Choo Pain Train.
Choo Choo Pain Train.
Choo Choo Pain Train. And the only note is that the plan is going, hey, diddle diddle, straight up the middle.
I love it. I'll tell you.
There's a reason I picked this list.
Big fan of Angron, big fan of Lord of Skulls. That's where I'm with it.
Yeah, what I love about World Eaters is it's an army for people who are committed to playing the game in what I feel is a very fun way, which is let's rumble, let's go. You don't have a side game into being sneaky. You will rumble at people, and you just have to rumble better than they do.
I'll rumble better than you. Well, let's fix this list though, so it doesn't lose to the rumbles.
Yes. So the entire game plan of this army is we're gonna hit hard, hey diddle diddle, straight up the middle, and we're gonna hit people.
I'm looking at these 8-bound, these Exalted 8-bound, and I love them. Blake just painted me like 30 of these things, and I want to hit them on the table, but my God, are they overpriced.
Do you see this number? That number is insanity.
That's more than the Death Shrouds, and they're overpriced.
Yeah. Yeah, and these guys are toughness 6, but have a 3-up save. It is insane that they cost as much as they do.
Would love if 8-bound and Exalted 8-bound were good. They were good in 9. They were good just 4 months ago. What happened? I don't know. I don't know who at GW thought this was a good idea. But
they were the only viable way to play World Eaters last edition. They were very good. So clearly they got nerfed. And boy, did they get nerfed. They went 60 points for an Exalted 8-bound. Are you kidding?
Just press the delete button, Jack.
Bye. Sorry. So here's the thing when you're being aggressive. You need...
Points efficiency.
You need points efficiency.
Simply put.
You need points efficiency. Again, you can't afford fluff because you're planning on a different reason, although World Eaters also aren't the best army. A different reason is when you are planning to get in a fight, you have to be good at the fight. Your army has to be 100% dedicated to the fight, or you're going to lose to someone who is 100% dedicated to the fight.
And not just in terms of like how you spend your points. So you have to spend your points really effectively here, because even though you put 1,900 points out of your 2,000 points into straight damage here, if you charge in with this 9 Exalted 8-bound and regular 8-bound models for 500 points total, you're going to charge in there and kill like a screen or maybe a Rhino or something really not worth 310 points. And then you're going to get absolutely butt blasted because you were 6 Space Marines standing with holding hands.
It's not going to be great. You can't have units that underperform when you're looking to have them in a fight. Yeah.
So what is points efficient in World Eaters, Jack?
Okay, you don't have a ton of options because there's like 6 units in the army. Mm-hmm. My favorite is Terminators. Terminators. So here's the thing. Terminators, I think, make the best use per point of the World Eaters rules. Mm-hmm. And the World Eaters do have some good rules, don't get me wrong. The World Eaters Berserker, or the World Eaters, like, the Blessings of Khorne, give some really good buffs to the army.
Yeah.
Some really good buffs to the army. Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, I like the Terminators because you can make them move plus 2 inches and advance in charge and flat advance 6. So you get Terminator stat lines that then move 13 inches in charge.
Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty good. They got a pretty fast sprint in time.
Yeah, they got a pep to their step.
They do. And I like that because for the price of 10 Terminators, for the price of 6 8-bound, you drop a little bit of points and you get...
They're cheaper than 6 8-bound?
No, they're $390 for 10,
okay.
$310 for 6 8-bound.
Yeah.
And the difference there is just stark because the Terminators hit about as hard as the 8-bound do. I mean, realistically, they both delete whatever they hit, except 10 Terminators hits harder than 6 8-bound.
And it stands there longer.
And it stands there longer with a 2-up save in cover, and it's cheaper per point. If you take a las cannon to the face, you're not losing like 55
Do we
points.
need 10-man Terminators, or is 5 with World Eaters buff sufficient to like kill whatever it wants, and then it's less commitment?
So the other thing I wanted to include was Lord Invocatus.
Okay.
Do you know what Lord Invocatus does?
Why don't you walk us through it?
So Lord Invocatus is the named character on Juggernaut. Lord Invocatus himself has Scout and gives 2 infantry units at the start of the game Scout.
That's good.
Yeah, 6 inches.
Yeah.
Really helping you, hey diddle diddle, straight up the middle, right off the jump.
Yeah.
So I like that personally.
So are you thinking Lord Invocatus and just like 20 Terminators?
Do you think
we're going to have to cut a lot more for that?
We are. Do you think that list can run you over if it goes first?
Depends on what I'm playing.
Depends what you're playing, for sure. So I like the Angron Khorne Lord of Skulls package. If you don't know, Angron gives the Khorne Lord of Skulls full rerolls to hit and shooting.
Yeah.
Just not on turn 1.
Well, that was actually the direction I was going to go with it.
What were you thinking?
I was going to ask, what happens if we make World Eaters a shooting army that just runs straight at you, and then if you come near it, or while it's running straight at you, it's still World Eaters. So, like, I'm thinking, like, Angron, Lord of Skulls, and just to, like, give that target priority confusion, maybe Forge Fiends or Predators, just something else that shoots with reroll hits really effectively.
So the way this works for anyone who's not clear, because it looks, if you look at Angron's data sheet, it looks like he only gives the rerolls to hit in combat, because you have to pick the reroll to hit at the start of the charge phase. But the rerolls to hit just says you reroll hits on all of your attacks, and it lasts, the aura lasts until the start of your next charge phase. So turn 1, you don't get it. You don't get rerolls.
Best turn to get it.
It is kind of the best turn to get it. But turn 2 on, you will get rerolls, because turn 1, in your shooting phase, you don't have it. In your charge phase, you activate full rerolls to hit aura. Then, the following turn, you still have that aura up, then you take your shooting, then you repick it again.
So I'm thinking, instead of taking what is ultimately not that tough, which are Space Marine bodies, right? Berserkers, 8-bound Terminators, all of it is very killable, though out of those, I like the Terminators the best.
Right.
What if we take tough stuff to target confused people? So like Angron, Lord of Skulls, maybe a second Lord of Skulls, who cares? Predators, Forge Fiends, Ally, and a Bloodthirster, like just that high toughness, 5 bindles. Like if we're stat checking people, let's embrace it.
That's totally fair. I'm 100% on board with cutting the Khorne Berserkers and the Rhino.
Now, a lot of people who play World Eaters, and I see this in our comment section, they are like, how can you play World Eaters without the Khorne Berserker Rhino? You guys don't know what you're talking about. It's the best package ever. Jack, why are we cutting it?
So it's a lot of points for Marines that die like Marines. What was it? It was about 400 points, again. Now, I like it a little bit better than the Plague Marine Rhino, but still, it runs in with a lot of AP1 attacks.
Yeah.
And it's like strength 5. That kills some things. Your opponent will not let it hit anything that is particularly valuable, because you don't have the threat overload to force connections in places where your opponent doesn't want it.
You're also like move 6 infantry. I mean, you can make yourself much faster.
Yeah, you can. You can get out 3, move 8, advance 6, charge.
But you're not fly.
You're not fly.
Yeah. And you are able to move through walls, but you can't move through models, and you can't end your charge in a wall. So you are, especially at more competitive levels, easily blocked from charging what you really want to get to. And then you're charging the wrong thing, and then you're 300 points of Khorne Berserkers and a Master of Executions, plus the Rhino.
5 attacks apiece that hit on 3s at strength 6 AP1, damage 1 on the charge.
You're also super vulnerable to Overwatch.
Very vulnerable to Overwatch. And yeah, you get fights first off the character. That is super cool against melee armies, but even melee armies will bring together the damage to put down 10 Marines.
I'm much more concerned about fixing our plan to a shooting army than a melee army.
Yes.
So we're playing World Eaters. We are the melee army.
That's right. If you want to melee us, I feel like we can.
We'll figure that out.
We'll figure that one out. Now, I do think the Lord of Skulls is enough to beat most melee armies, because you have a melee army with a big melee piece that then also shoots.
Yeah. Shoots hard.
Shoots very hard.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, what if we not make it a shooting army? I'm not going to pretend we're not shooting Eldar, but what if we take a castle of guns, run it straight at you, and then most people either shoot back, and that's the game, or they charge the castle that's running straight at you with guns. But then in this case, it's charging World Eaters. And then also, after turn 1, realistically, we are charging with Angron, and we are charging with whatever else we want.
Yeah, and Angron is a force.
Angron tabled me by himself in one of these games.
Yes, Angron slays. I love Angron. I want to play him all the time. It's great. The rest of the army tends to let Angron down a little bit. Let's try to make Angron shine.
Now, before we make Angron shine, I want to take a second and talk about John Apocalypse's £2 super chat. Thinking of Mono Zinch for a second army, yay or nay? I'm all for Zinch. Zinch for Fate Weaver, Zinch for yay. Appreciate your super chat.
Absolutely. Mono Zinch is my favorite way to run demons. I ran a couple times last edition. I think Zinch is super cool, and they're very fun with their psychic sorcery flavor.
I just built the Lord Change.
That's right.
So yeah, this World Leaders list, I'm not, like, I don't know what the best points per stats are for spamming this stuff, but my head is going to Brigands from Chaos Knights, my head is going to Bloodthirster, my head is going, we could run 3x3 Blood Crushers, honestly, if we want to be weird with it, but I don't think that's the right call.
I do want to benefit somewhat from the World Leaders, rules, because the World Leaders army rules are pretty good. If we only included this, I think that's still fine from World Leaders.
What's the point of these Jackals?
The Jackals hold objectives. They let you re-roll a die on the Blood Tithe check whenever you make it. So they're just holding objectives, really.
Okay, yeah.
You're not allowed to take Nurglings. Nurglings also don't hold objectives. But they're your cultists. Unfortunately, you pay out the nose for cultists for some reason. And they sit on objectives. They technically hit harder than cultists, but no, they don't, because never get into combat with them.
Yeah.
Please. So, if we're looking at just this package, the Lord of Skulls is good, but honestly, I feel like if you're taking 3 Forge Fiends is cheaper than a Lord of Skulls.
That's true. Honestly, I'd much prefer 3 Forge Fiend to a Lord of Skulls. With reroll hits, they slap. But without sustained hits or lethal hits that they're used to getting from Chaos Marines, it is a lot less painful.
It sure is. Let me take a look. They unfortunately have the Forge Fiend do less than nothing in this codex, but it's cheaper.
It's also still Strength 10 AP 3 damage.
So it's 150. For some reason, the Thousand Suns one is significantly cheaper. Oh, Jackals, anyone can make an objective sticky if you die on it for 1 CP.
Yeah, I know. That's one of my favorite things about this army. That's how I think it works.
150 for Forge Fiend, and instead of getting devastating wounds, they make infantry take battle shocks.
Yeah, so very unexciting.
Very unexciting, but still probably your best shooting option.
I actually think Brigands are better than that, to be honest.
Yeah.
They hit on 2s. Because I guess you do care that you're faster. Like, getting a lot of sight angles with these guys are real, but Brigands are even faster than that.
Yeah, Brigands move, 12?
12, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and
if he has a Lord of Skulls, I feel like he wants to use it, right?
No, we're not cutting the Lord of Skulls. That guy's not going anywhere. I'm thinking about... to me, this first 1,050 points or whatever that we have here is written in stone.
Okay, so Khorne Lord of Skulls plus Angron plus 20 Jackals. How do we make those units rip?
Well, I think we're going for Threat Overload, and we're just considering our options, right? So 20 Terminators insert here. We could do 3 Brigands is 450, and then 10 Terminators. We could do 2x5 Terminators and those 3 Brigands. We could do a second Lord of Skulls. We could do the 3 Forge Fiends. Any other data sheets I'm not thinking of here? I'm really limiting myself away from the softer, squishier things because I'm trying to load into that defense.
Yeah. Just make everything generically pretty tough. I do like Brigands in World Leaders. If you're going to get aggressive, you run up. These things run up just behind your front lines and say, if you try and poke out to deal with it, you're going to take some shooting back. 3
Brigands and a Lord of Skulls walking up the table. And this means Angron's not confused about being a reroll hit support piece and being Angron. He can just... Angron.
Yeah.
So 3 Brigands, because they hit on 2s, a Lord of Skulls, that is enough firepower. That is enough toughness 10 to 12 to distract someone from, do I shoot Angron, who's going to table me by himself, or do I shoot these guns, which are actually incredibly good? OC8 on all 3 of those bad boys means they can box your objectives for you. From there, I think we finish it with those 10 Terminators and let them, and maybe Lord of Incarnatus if that fits.
There's something else that we can do. Also, I believe 10 Terminators plus Lord of Incarnatus just doesn't fit with the Brigands, but let me put the Brigands on.
Yeah.
I do like Brigands. I also like Angron moves up with the Lord of Skulls right into the middle of the board, and then the following turn just starts shooting.
Yeah.
So I really like Brigands, and they also help the aggressive package because you just run up the board with them. I know they're a shooting unit, but you're going to use them.
This is a shooting edition.
You're going to be trying to shoot people at close range with these guys.
Yeah, and Threat Overload still.
And they're really good at
OC8.
OC8, just taking and holding objectives as Khorne Lord of Skulls and Angron pushes up. This is also a pretty good reanimation package for Angron. right? Angron Jackals, because the Jackals each let you re-roll a die. Mm-hmm. If they're on an objective, the Corn Lord of Skulls, for every unit he kills, lets you modify a die up or down. And then Angron comes back on 666s.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good reanimation package.
I'm not against loading this thing up with 6 Jackal units and like just fishing for Angron comes back to life.
We can do that. The rerolls is for every objective that has a unit on it, not for every unit that's on the objective.
Doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you don't have Brigands and you have Forge Fiends also work in this slot.
Yeah, they're the same cost pretty much.
Same cost. What we could do is we can load up on characters. The solo characters are not bad in World Eaters.
So I looked at the solo character World Eater spam because I'm all about that life. But Lord on Juggernaut kind of hits like a soft baby.
Does he hit like a soft baby with Berserker Glaive? I forget what that lets him do. +1 attacks and damage. When he charges, he gets plus D3 attacks and damage.
What's his baseline stats?
So his base mainline stats are 7 attacks. So that would go on average to 9 at... strength 7, strength 8 on the charge. We go to 10 attacks, actually, because he gets +1 attack on the charge. Goes to strength 8, AP 1.
AP 1 is where I fell off with this guy.
Damage very high. It would
3 or D3 plus 2.
It'd be, average of 4, but it could be anywhere from 3 to 5.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's not great. Let's talk about the World Eaters Demon Prince.
I'm all about Demon Princes as more toughness 10 added to this package.
Yeah, so Demon Princes.
How many points do we have left?
Funny story. At this point, we have a grand total of 460.
Okay, so what's the Demon Prince do?
So the Demon Prince, I'm just providing options.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Demon Prince base, the one on foot is a 4-up invuln aura for infantry, which we don't have enough of to make me want it.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that.
The one with wings is makes a battle shock for everyone in engagement range.
Sure.
And then at the start of the battle, he picks a sworn foe. Every time he makes an attack that targets that unit, you reroll hits and wounds. But at the end of the battle, if the sworn foe has not been destroyed, this model is destroyed.
Idea.
3
Mauler Fiends.
3 Mauler Fiends. Okay.
Because I feel you on this Demon Prince stuff.
No, that's totally fine.
I'm looking at it, and like a Mauler Fiend just hits harder than a Demon Prince, and we're not using them for any of their like abilities.
So you can give an enhancement to a Demon Prince. Give him that plus D3 attacks, plus D3 damage.
2 Fiends and 1 Prince. You know.
Let's see if that fits.
We'll see if that fits.
So World Eaters Mauler Fiends are expensive as hell for no reason. They're 175.
They're expensive as hell because they have World Eaters rules.
Fair.
The advance and charge +2 move on a Mauler Fiend a little bit different.
That's fair. So if we've got that, melee weapons, you're going to take Lasher Tendrils just for the extra attacks. Because you're not going to take the Melta gun.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be advancing and charging with this unit quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Mauler Fiend's Fists are 6 attacks at strength, 14 AP2, damage D6 plus 1.
And there'll be 7 strength 15s.
7 strength 15s, and the Lasher Tendrils don't get an extra attack, but still get the extra point of strength to go up to strength 8 on the charge.
They're okay.
They're fine. I don't think they actually hit that hard. Let's look at their abilities. Whenever you make a charge roll, if one or more of the targets are below their starting strength, add 2 to the roll.
That is actually nice.
Yeah, and if your enemy unit's below its starting strength, you get +1 to hit.
Okay, so you're going to hit on 2 as the Brigands will trigger this.
Just with the chain cannon or something.
Something chips damage. That actually is nice, because then you're +2 to charge, and then Angron could make you +3 to charge. Obviously, +2 move is easy to do. Advance and charge is possible.
I'm seeing something here about a buddy cop list with Angron and Scarbrand.
I was going to mention Scarbrand Bloodthirster, but the smaller fiend idea is where I'm at the moment.
What does Scarbrand do?
Scarbrand hits like a mother
hecker?
A mother person who does stuff to mothers. And then he's
not that expensive.
He has like a +1 attack for Corn Demons. We're not using that really.
I think Angron's a Corn Demon, right?
Unless it's Legion. Legion might be Legion Demonic. I'm not sure.
It is Legion's Demonic.
And then he makes people not fall back
on a failed leadership check.
But it's really you take him for his like profile, which is good.
Toughness 11 on him, not 10.
Yeah.
20 wounds with a 4-up.
He kills everything in this game. Like nothing survives getting hit by Scarbrand. Maybe 20 warriors will survive because he doesn't have attacks.
Yep.
But
so the reason that I don't think that Scarbrand greater than sign Angron is because Angron moves 22 inches and charges.
Yeah, no. Scarbrand not better than Angron. Scarbrand rapid ingress to try to get in combat that way. But I think that's like not the threat overload we're going for. I want to be on the table with this army.
I don't hate Scarbrand or Bloodthirster as part of this army, though.
Me either. They think they're both good.
I mean...
I could see a Bloodthirster... So here's really the question. A Bloodthirster's 300, 2 Mauler Fiends just 350.
That's tough.
I think 2 Mauler Fiends is better than a Bloodthirster. Because it's two things, of course, and then they hit functionally pretty much the same. Like, a Bloodthirster hits harder, but there's two. And then the Mauler Fiends are so much faster.
Yeah, especially with the advance and charge that you might get access to.
Yeah.
So, if we wanted to drop triple Mauler Fiend in here...
What does triple do? How many points is that?
We're 65 over.
Cut a Jackal.
Cut a Jackal,
put 3 Mauler Fiends in your call a day. He said, piddly diddly forward for the Emperor, you know? Like, this is... What is more forward than cutting more Jackals?
Forward for the Emperor? What are we doing here?
The Chaos Emperor, you know? Angron.
So, who's holding objectives and doing things? I mean, I understand we're killing them, so we're trying to ignore that.
The plan is storm hostile objective, and...
Can you fix that one?
You can fix that one.
Okay.
Storm hostile objective, and you could work it. Is there any lone op we could take? There isn't, right?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah.
Cleanse? No, I hate cleanse. I mean, Mauler Fiends can cleanse because they're not charging turn 1, and then at some point you're tabling your opponent, so who cares?
Fixed seems rough, man.
We're not doing tactical. We draw a card, we cannot do it. Like,
No. You can't do the ones
the ones we can do are cleanse and storm hostile.
You can do any of the holding objectives.
We can take engage and storm hostile. That's a plan.
That is legitimately a plan.
That is a plan.
It's a plan where your opponent's like, oh, he's going to kill me, isn't he?
I mean, you're falling ass backwards into points by playing 40k, but what else is this army trying to do?
So there's a number of ways you can go with this, right? This is the triple Mauler Fiend Brigand package. Triple Mauler Fiend, triple Brigand, Khorne Lord of Skulls, Jackals, Angron. This is violence right here.
I love it, Jack. I think this is pure.
I'm surprised you're advocating for this, but I'm here for it.
I'm here to embrace what world leaders are about. Am I a world leaders player? Only if it's janky. But like, if I'm gonna do this, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is what Conman 2-3-4 is doing.
Man, I wish. You know what I wish? I wish you could ally Angron into demons.
We have this. I could put this on the board today.
You stay off my Angron.
Okay.
Angron tables you, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really wish we could put Angron in demons. Because if you could put Angron in demons, you could take big bash boy demons.
If demons could reverse ally, they'd be up a tier in power level. They just need some help.
True. But, so there's a number of ways you can go with this, right? You could take Forge Fiends instead of the Brigands, and then you have the Sextuple Fiend package. And that list hits pretty hard. I was seeing something for the Soul Grinder of Khorne for deep striking.
He's bad. I've tried Soul Grinders many times.
What about the...
Believe me, my brain ran through every demon unit you have access to.
The Defiler.
I would have recommended a Runmaster on Blood Throne and 20 Fleshhounds if I was going to try to recommend stuff. But that is so against the premise here.
So, units you can divide your list by, right? Because that's basically what this is going to be, is you have the rough package here, and then you divide the rest of your list by stuff. You can go with no shooting. I wouldn't recommend that personally. But if you want to go no shooting, then you can go things like Fleshhounds with Renmaster, Mauler Fiends. You can take things like the Terminators plus the Lord Invocatus. You can take things of that nature. If you can take Scarbrand, you can take a Bloodthirster. Those are all great. If you want to take some shooting, you're basically pigeonholed into Brigands or Forge Fiends. Predators. Or Second Lord of Skulls if you feel like it, but boy, is that a lot. I mean, I'm just saying, there's a list.
It's not much more than all 3 Brigands plus the Jackals. It's actually the exact same.
Yeah. If you think about it, Angron plus 3 Lord of Skulls is 1995.
No, I think this is actually a competitive, genuinely good army. It's a little stat checky. It's a lot stat checky, but the Brigands can spread out. They don't need to be near anybody to function, so that can be your engage package. Mauler Fiends are Mauler Fiends. they'll do whatever they want. They're 100% autonomous. They get rerolls from Angron, and then Angron and Lord of Skulls, you know what they're doing. They're dropping in the middle.
This is definitely the part of the list that I'm the shakiest on, because I haven't actually seen Mauler Fiends do anything this edition yet. I haven't put them on the table. But the Brigands are tried and true.
Yeah.
Angron hits like a freight train and moves very fast. Khorne Lord of Skulls hit like a freight train in shooting and combat, especially if he's buddy cop with Angron. And then the Mauler Fiends are little seeker missiles that can go a grand total of 18 inches in charge at +2.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ludicrously fast.
That's very fast.
Unlike, people are target priority, right? Like, the Mauler Fiends and Angron are literally charging you to infantry. You're deploying on the line, you're not hiding behind terrain, you're deploying every model in this army on the line besides the Brigands, and you're going. And then the Brigands are shooting you from behind, triggering the +2 to charge. Lord of Skulls and Angron are like dead center, or Angron's coming back to life, so, that's a thing. And then, like, the Mauler Fiends.
Also, the Lord of Skulls on Overwatch is legit, because turn 1, you run up, you don't get the reroll hits, but then on your opponent's turn, you'll have it, and you can just be like, that thing.
Yeah. Honestly, I would write Brigand / Forge Fiend there, just because they're both 150. They do the same exact thing. I like Brigands better. I think they shoot more effectively autonomously in this list, and I think they have better OC, which matters.
But I agree that I think that they are very interchangeable, right? The same points cost, the same roll.
Yeah.
If you don't have Brigands, don't be sad about including the Forge Fiends.
If you want to play World Eaters pure, this is how you do it.
Yeah, the Forge Fiends hit very hard, but they have to stay near Angron to do more stuff. I would not recommend taking a big knight. People are talking about that. I would not recommend taking a big knight.
You need more units.
Also, the big knights are just not as good as the Brigands. The Brigands hit on 2s.
If you're going to take a big knight, take a Lord of Skulls.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit more expensive, but the Lord of Skulls A is cooler, and B is better.
Yeah. All right.
Also, I saw somebody at WTC who had a Khorne Lord of Skulls tattoo. I believe he was on the Norwegian team.
How exciting.
Yes.
So Conman234, hopefully you love this list. I think it definitely goes forward for Chaos, and I think that's what you wanted. So I'm happy with this.
I kind of want to run this into you.
Yeah. Let's check on to our number 3 army, Numberjack. This is Chaos Space Marines.
Chaos Space Marines. So this is very much your wheelhouse, Nick. So why don't you go off?
This is my jam. This is my kingdom over here. Abaddon the Spoiler, the Chad himself. 2 Dark Communes, both Chaos Undivided. Love it. 5 Terminators. 2 fat Accursed Cultist units for those Dark Communes to join, also Undivided. 10 Nurgle Cultists for those sticky objectives. Double 4 Obliterators. 1's Nurgle, 1's Undivided. 2 Forge Fiends, Nurgle.
Okay, so we have some notes. So this is for a teams event.
Okay.
He can have access to demons, as no one else is playing them in his roster.
Awesome.
Daddy Abby is switching between 4+ invul and full rerolls depending on the matchup. If I need my Accursed Cultist to take several turns, or if I have all the line of sight for the Forge Fiend, and if the Oblitz dropped for reserves, I may struggle sometimes to score objectives as I have few units. I thought about replacing the Terminators with demons, Changeling, Blue Scribes, Flamers, and I also like to add Cypher as well, but what changes would you make for this list? Thank you.
Right off the bat, and this might sound controversial, but I would say cut the Terminators. I think a lot of people would either expect me to say take that Terminator to a 10, but I actually have found through lots of testing with 10 Terminators, and even confirmed by Alex Sacco on our podcast last week, that the 10 Terminators, very optional. I don't say they're terrible, but they're fragile, as we just discussed. And while they can be Nurgle to be unshootable, the whole point is you want to get close to your opponent. The other factor that the 10 Terminators do is that they drag Abaddon forward, and Abaddon actually wants to be a support piece for this style of list.
So I absolutely think you either go 10 or 0.
Yeah.
I know that Anthony was having a different take on it, where he was like, the army wants Abaddon to go forward. I don't want Abaddon to sit back as a support piece. So you either lean into 10 Chaos Terminators, Abby, go forward and build your list around that, or you take Abaddon by himself, which I assume is what you're about to say.
Yeah.
And then he is a more support and command and control node for the army.
Yeah.
I don't think five Chaos Terminators can't split the difference, because you're playing 2 completely different playstyles with Abaddon.
Yeah. I will say, by cutting Terminators to 0, you make this army into a long-range shooting army that uses Accursed Cultists and Abaddon as countercharge, which is how I prefer to play my Chaos Marines. Whereas if you take 10 Terminators, then everything kind of makes more sense in that aggressive role. But Accursed Cultists don't actually do the aggressive style too effectively. effectively, they do the countercharge style much more effectively. So this list feels like it's trying to do two different armies at once to me.
Yeah, and that's largely because you're taking a half-strength Chaos Terminator unit that isn't effective going forward, but is very expensive if you just hold him back. Mm-hmm. So we're either going to commit to taking 10 or 0, and I'm assuming that we're going to commit to taking 0.
I'm suggesting that.
Okay, sounds good.
So if we do that, what I think we should recognize is, like, we are now a shooting army. There is no center core pushing forward. Your center core is a cursed cultist. And while they can definitely box people in the center, especially if they bring heavier anti-tank weapons, like an Eldar army, for example, that just brings Bright Lances, you can just put cursed cultists on every objective and say that's the game plan. But oftentimes they are too fragile, even with the 4 pinballs, to just push the center early. I like to wait till turns 2, turns 3, turns 4 to countercharge with the cultists and overwhelm, maybe rapid ingress a unit, that kind of thing. And I really lean more into the chaos shooting side. So I want to get a 3rd Forge Fiend in there. I think they are the best unit in the Codex, like by miles.
Do you think that would change if you happen to have 3 units of accursed cultists? Do you think at that point you can push up because it takes so long to get rid of them?
I don't, to be honest. I think that in teams you could do triple accursed cultists, and that's like a different thing. I'm not against that in teams, but there are certain armies that will just table accursed cultists, and you build your army into a stat check with it. I've tried triple accursed cultists a lot. Things like if you just dodge Eldar, that becomes a lot more viable, but Eldar with a Wraith Knight will just table you with Dev Wounds. Certain armies, like Space Marines, especially with Desolators and Aggressors, have the volume to just kill your accursed cultists, so you'll have to dodge those as well.
Because they get an average of like 12 shots into you, they'll do like 30 mortal wounds.
Accursed cultists are not an effective stat check where it's like, because there's no follow-up, right? Like, you can't spam it out with my 3 max accursed cultists and 120 regular cultists. I tried that, also doesn't work. You have to be more deliberate and careful about how you actually get them into position and put them in a position where your opponent can't bring the anti-infantry to bear at that point in time of the game.
So my first thought with that would be, like, what if you took 3 units of accursed cultists and backed it up with a bunch of Forge Fiends? So if your opponent pokes out to shoot them, they get shot back.
First thing I said was add a 3rd Forge Fiend.
I mean, I'm all about it, right? We add the 3rd Forge Fiend here, and it's just the best unit in the book, as you said.
It's the best unit in the book.
Are we looking to make them all Nurgle, or are we looking to keep them?
Here's the thing. What I've recently been turned on to is the beauty, the power, the god gloriousness that is the Hellbrute. Now let me talk about the Hellbrute really quick, because it's so synergistic with Nurgle, it hurts.
Go off, King.
Basically, you have your Hellbrute, and he gives sustained and lethal hits when you're triggering your thing. And the Nurgle, of course, means you trigger your Dark Pact on 5s. So you're getting sustained hits on 5s and lethal hits on 5s. And then Abaddon giving you full rerolls to hit. Do you know what that means? That means out of 9 attacks, just to make it simple, 4 of them are automatically wounding and 8 of them are hitting. So you are very potentially, on your 9 attacks, dealing on mathematical averages like 12 wounds or something, depending on the toughness, of course. But it's like insanity. So I think if we're going to go super hard into shooting and Nurgle the Hellbrute, I tried it yesterday, I'm like very, very happy with it. Now the points for this are going to come from somewhere, and I think they should come from Obliterators, personally.
I'm not shocked by that at all.
Yeah.
But what we could get, so do we cut the Nurgle ones or the Undivided ones? I feel like we cut the Nurgle and let the Undivided come down and do the rerolls thing.
So I think you actually do the opposite. I think you cut the Undivided ones and you make, I would say 2 of the Forge Fiends Undivided, but at least 1. Because I find the Forge Fiends make so much better use of the Undivided than the Obliterators do. The Forge Fiends get better shots at rolling Hazardous or rolling Devastating Wounds because they're rerolling wounds much more effectively. And then they don't want to be tethered to Abaddon. At least not all 3 of them. One, Nurgle one, sitting next to a Hellbrute, sitting next to an Abaddon, Nurgle one being unshootable, shooting with sustained lethal 5s, reroll hits from Abaddon, Hellbrute are hanging out behind a wall. That is amazing. That hits so hard. And then you outflank the other 2 with Undivided and Ectoplasma, and they just show up, and then they get a different angle altogether, and then they don't need to be near Abaddon because they're Undivided. Reroll hits, reroll wounds, dev wounds, and that picks up a unit. And then your Nurgle guy picks up a unit, and then you have another one in reserve for turn 3 to pick up a 3rd unit. And the thing with these Obliterators, the reason I like the Nurgle is, again, with the sustained hits and the havocs from the Hellbrute that we're putting in here, they're going to go crazy, and they can also just deep strike in or even deploy right by Abaddon and then just lay waste with indirect fire and call it good there.
Is there a possibility that if we design too much of the list to go independent of Abaddon, then also it's going independent of the Hellbrute? And maybe the Hellbrute... How much is the Hellbrute?
Hellbrute's 155. The Hellbrute doesn't need to affect your whole army. He's affecting your Accursed Cultists in close combat.
So do we want to give them a different mark?
No, I like them as undivided. You could definitely argue for Slanesh as their mark. You can't make them corn. But I like them undivided because you get full rerolls to hit, full rerolls to wound, and then even with regular sustained lethal hits, it's just like nuts. Abaddon as a solo guy also finds himself dying. It's a real thing. You have to make your peace with it. It's okay. He doesn't cost 600 points now. So when he dies, you want to not have 0 rerolls in your army.
That's fair. Yeah. So we take the 10 cultists here, right? We take the 10 cultists. We take 1 unit of obliterators, so we cut the undivided ones.
Yeah, cut the undivided ones. I would make 2 Forge Fiends Nurgle, or 2 Forge Fiends undivided, personally.
Okay.
That's very side grady, though. That's like personal preference. But I would outflank those 2, and then probably deep strike the obliterators. Put Abaddon, Hellbrute, Forge Fiend of Nurgle in a little package. That hits so hard. Like, I literally roll it out a few times against various targets, and you will be astonished how hard it hits.
What guns do you take on the Hellbrute?
Twin Las Cannon and a Hellbrute Hammer.
Hellbrute Hammer.
Hellbrute Hammer. Don't get impressed by its output. It does technically have output. It's actually going to trick you into thinking it's good at having output, but
it doesn't.
This man makes your army hit, not himself hit. I wouldn't be recommending the Hellbrute if I hadn't tried it. Let me put it that way. I tried it and I loved it. Let's Talk Wargaming's also got a £5 super chat. This is literally my list / same dilemma. I preach, boys, preach. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Let's Talk Wargaming. Appreciate your super chat. So this is basically my version of the defensive version of Chaos. The offensive version would be up that Terminator package to 10, keep the 8 obliterators, and not put this Hellbrute, maybe cut a Cursed Cultist, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So currently this list, we've got the Hellbrute, we've got 4 Blitz, 3 Forge Fiends, double Accursed Cultists, regular Cultists, and Abaddon. We have 205 points left.
So this is where I think we fix it with scoring now. Because we have 3 Forge Fiends, we have Obliterators, and it hits so hard in shooting. Between Abaddon and double Accursed Cultists, and the Accursed Cultists are going to have to use terrain and be careful and use rapid ingress to not get shot that hard, even though they can take the getting shot, because what you want to do is that late game overwhelm the crap out of them with OC2, hit ludicrously hard, they can't deal with it anymore because the Forge Fiends have gone to work, and you basically win the end game with your Accursed Cultists.
So the idea is the Forge Fiend and the Hellbrute and the Accursed Cultists are what benefits from the Hellbrute aura, and the rest of this just tries to act independent?
No, the Obliterators need that aura. So they come in next to Abaddon, they get reroll hits, they get Hellbrute aura, they shoot indirect if they absolutely have to, and they just light people up to town.
Yeah.
If it's undivided, it can act independently. So that's why I'm not afraid to have the Accursed Cultists. I typically outflank one of them and rapid ingress it in somewhere, and then that can just be its own problem solver for an objective on the far flank that everybody forgot about.
We could make one of them Slanesh, one of them undivided.
You can, I can get behind that, making one Slanesh, and that can be the one that starts with the Hellbrute, so it just hits mega hard. Because at that point, it's protecting Abaddon, too, from getting charged and stuff, which is honestly Abaddon's biggest weakness. Ironic as that is.
Yeah.
So they're protecting Abaddon, so they'll benefit from Abaddon giving reroll hits for a while, and this way they can benefit from that Hellbrute.
Yeah, because then they get lethal and sustained on 5s, and that is
and reroll hits from Abaddon.
Reroll hits. That's pretty terrifying.
I mean, just talking about the 6 Torments in that Slanesh unit. Not even talking about the 10 little dudes, the commune itself.
I mean, I'm happy to run the numbers on that.
Okay.
It's 5.5 attacks per guy on average.
Yep.
Times 6 for 33 attacks.
Okay. So
they hit on 4s?
They hit on 3s when you're popping +1 to hit, +1 to wound.
So divided by 9 times 8, we're looking at 29 hits, but wait, there's more. So that's going to be 29 hits and 14 wounds. And then
you're +1 to wound. So even against vehicles, your 29 hits, wounding on 5s, is still going to be about 10 more hits. It's like 29 point something, 9 more wounds rather. So you had 14 wounds plus 9 to 10 more wounds. It's 23 wounds, AP1 damage too.
Yep.
Just from the regular torments.
Yeah. Yep. And that's on stuff they have to wound on 6s.
And
that hits.
They're insanity. So you play cagey with this army. It's not the brute force tailing. You basically beta strike on turn 2 once your S stuff can outflank and deep strike effectively for angles. Turn 1, you're pretty much playing with the Forge Fiend. Abaddon's hiding behind a wall, using the miracle strat as needed to keep the Forge Fiend alive. Hellbrute's hiding behind a wall. Accursed Cultist, the Slanesh squad, is hiding behind walls. And then your Forge Fiend probably gets a kill turn 1. I mean, it's between lethal sustained hits, Abaddon rerolls. It's nuts. It's absolutely insanity.
Yeah, your opponent really has to keep their head down for that.
And, like, they can't hide from all of the angles, right? The Forge Fiend is dead center, staring down midfield. Then they can hide from that, but then there's 2 outflanking Forge Fiends plus deep striking obliterators with ignores line of sight. And then as they come forwards to interact with that midfield, this is where the accursed cultists go to wreck face instead of leading with accursed cultists, where they actually just get killed too effectively.
Do you want me to make you an offer?
What's the offer?
The remainder of this list, on the nose, 2,000 points, can be filled out with the Changeling, Blue Scribes, and Flamers.
That's a great ending to this army. Probably what we're going to go with. The only thing I was going to actually suggest, and this is going to be an oddball pick, is 3 Chaos Spikes. And I loved him when I played him twice now.
How many points are they?
95. So
95.
It's going to be your Cultists and probably the Flamers, and you just run 2 lone ups, Scribes and Changeling, and then the Bikes. And if you have points, you could even turn Scribes into Cypher potentially. I would like to get Cypher in here.
I want to get Cypher in. I looked at fitting him, but 105 is a bit rough.
Let me talk about these Bikes, though. So, they don't do anything. Don't pretend they do. I give them 2 Plasma Guns and a Power Fist because they're free. What they do is every single turn they go into Strategic Reserve. And then they just make your tactical cards turn on. In my last game with them, I got Investigate Signals on turn 2 because they just showed up and did it. I got Deploy Teleport Homers the following turn for Deployment Zone for 5. They showed up and did it. They stayed on the board because at that point I was like running some calculations about what cards remain. And then I drew Capture Enemy Post and they just drove on the objective. Now, if you don't have anything that can recursively go into reserves and your only reserve threat is the Obliterators, people are going to screen them until they're not screened anymore. And then Changeling and Blue Scribes are busy being like lone ops, not really deep strike threatening. So you don't have any opportunity to get behind enemy lines, deploy Teleport Homers for big points, or capture enemy post ever. Bikes turn it all on for you, and I've scored it repeatedly with them.
So that's a good scoring package there.
Yeah.
If you take Bikes, you could take Cypher, and then that would be 200 points on the nose. That's basically the rest of the list because you have 205. There's a question in the chat of what do you take if you don't want to take the Hellbrute?
If you don't want to take the Hellbrute,
I feel like that's
a big part of this package here. You're not shooting nearly as hard.
I feel like you take more shooting, so that would probably look like a Blitz, and then you just don't have as much scoring, but you have more shooting in different places.
Yeah, so the Hellbrute is just here to amplify your shooting, so you'd have to replace it, and also your comp. Like, he's such a force multiplier. That with Abaddon, your damage gets exponential. I would really not recommend cutting the Hellbrute. If you are married to cutting the Hellbrute, I would suggest you have to fix it with more stats. This is where like the 4 more Obliterators come back in. And to get those 4 Obliterators come back in, you basically have to take the Accursed Cultists out, bring the 10 Terminators back in, play more of that Anthony aggressive style, which totally works. It kind of writes itself. I'll write it right now. 3 Forge Fiends, 8 Obliterators, 10 Terminators, Abaddon, divide by scoring.
Yeah. I don't think you need to go quite that far. So if you cut the, I mean, if you want to split the difference, right?
Sure.
So if you cut the Hellbrute, you end up with right now at 360 points left. You could take 4 Blitz and 3 Nurglings, and that's probably what you would end up doing.
3 Nurglings are like a pointless unit in my mind. They like don't do anything.
They score a secondary.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, or you take another unit of Accursed Cultists, right? Go up to 3, and then you can take some of the lone op scoring nonsense.
I don't think you can afford to skip the lone op scoring nonsense. Like, as much as we're filling it out with all the damage in the world, we could also start with Changeling and like Blue Scribes. Something needs to be there for this.
Yeah, something needs to lone op.
I think the 3 Bikes are worth putting in. I think people who try the 3 Bikes will be genuinely pretty happy with the 3 Bikes. It's a unit that is becoming one of my auto takes in Chaos Space Marines.
So what they do is at the end of your opponent's turn, you can pull them if they're within 6 of the board edge?
6 of the board edge.
And then they can come back 6 of the board edge on your turn. You just score secondaries repeatedly with them.
And then they're the Nurgle strat, or they have access to Nurgle strat, and they hide behind walls. So they really don't ever die, and they turn your secondaries on. And like, your army is so hyper-focused at killing people already, it's just a really good tool for 95. Like, better than your other lone op alternatives for scoring points, I would say.
Fair enough. So then we are left with 110 points. And for 110 points, you can't really get 2 things.
Well, we have 165 if we cut those cultists, which I'm totally about cutting those cultists.
I like the cultists. Don't they scout up? You say you can't shoot them.
They don't scout.
But they sticky objectives.
They sticky objectives. which is useful, and they are a screen. I don't hate the cultists. They can stick to your backfield, and they're perfectly fine.
So turn 1, they stick you your backfield, run up onto the top objective, say you can't shoot them, stick you that too?
Yeah, you can potentially do it that way if they're fast enough to do that. They move 6, so they're not really running that fast.
So I figure you string them out.
They have to physically get from your deployment zone to the objective, which is an advanced roll. And if you don't roll a good one, you're not going to do it. But it is possible.
It depends on the deployment zone, yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, I think we actually just add Cypher and call this list good. I mean, I love the Changeling, and I'm all pro Changeling, but it's not really fitting in here. We'd have to do some points finagling, and I don't want to cut anything. I really am happy with this. Personally, I would turn the Obliterators into 2 Havoc units in a Rhino, but I know if I say let's cut the Obliterators, that's going to be like, of course Nick said cut the Obliterators, so let's keep the Obliterators.
Of course Nick said cut the Obliterators.
Because I don't think they're good. In this list, they have real purpose, like Abaddon, sustain hits, Hellbrute, lethal hits, rerolls. It is so painful. What I have found, my problem with the Obliterators, is they don't necessarily get the job done on the turn they deep strike in, even with the stuff. So with the Hellbrute and Abaddon, I'm hoping that really amplifies it to the point where they don't mess it up. I'll give you some examples. I tried running Undivided a couple times, and yeah, sure, they get reroll hits, reroll wounds, and they probably don't mess up killing stuff up, but then your Forge Fiend will mess up killing stuff up because it's not using the strat, and that really relies on the strat. So, solve one problem, create another. The Nurgle Blitz, they don't rely on the rerolls because they have sustained hits, which also makes up for the fact that they can just roll bad shots, which reroll hits, reroll wounds does not make up for rolling bad shots. But Nurgle does. The problem with Nurgle is they still have to wound people. And, yes, Strength 12 is money in the bank, but 4s are fickle. Like, if I'm shooting a Knight, or if I'm shooting a Land Raider sitting behind terrain with Armor of Contempt, who would do that to me? Then it's going to get 4-up or even 3-up saves for my Obliterators. So between wounding on 4s, then they get 4-up saves or 3-up saves, we're looking at a 25% to 15% get damage through rate. And it's just not good enough.
Yeah, if it's a 2-up save with Armor of Contempt in cover, then yeah, it'll get a 3-up. If it's a 3-up save without Armor of Contempt, it'll get a 5-up no matter what.
Or there's
Or they'll rotate, which will get a 4-up.
Everybody's got influence in 40k.
Everyone's got influence.
So I found it's a low quantity of shots that then have to face the save problem, and that it's not reliable. So lethal hits really helps a lot here. Lethal sustain. Your 4 Obliterators will average 8 shots and average 7 to 8 hits on those shots, plus 3 to 4 wounds on those shots. So it will translate to about 8 wounds onto a Knight, which then even if they rotate, they'll fail for, which really helps the math.
Yeah, and that's a dead Knight.
That's a dead Knight. Well, it's actually not, but it can be if you're within 12.
Yes. Yeah, I was assuming it was 24
and they don't have Feel No Pain, which they do.
They have a 6-up, yeah.
Which would matter.
I feel like you're going to get the job done with the rest of the army. I mean, the Blitz...
That's the whole thing, right? It's a combined force. It's not... The Blitz, when they are your only or premier shooting package, are too unreliable. But as a tool, along with 3 Forge Fiends, a Hellbrute, Abaddon, it hits. It hits.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with this.
Yeah, I think it's quite good. I think it's quite good.
Question about how much you put on reserves. Obviously, it's list dependent. I would say my typical would be the Obliterators, both Undivided Forge Fiends, and then the Undivided Accursed Cultist package. I think that would be a good... That's actually too many points, so I'd probably deploy second Forge Fiend. Or, that's the choice, right? Forge Fiend or Accursed Cultist. That's what was the second reserve.
So, Obliterators go in the sky.
Obliterators go in the sky. 1 Forge Fiend's definitely going in reserve. And then you have points choice between second Forge Fiend or Dark Commune Cultist package.
Yep, and that's, I think, matchup dependent.
Yeah.
Board,
matchup,
table
dependent, all that stuff.
Yeah. This list shoots pretty damn hard. It has some good board glom at the end of the game, but it's not just a run at your opponent, because you will, if you let your opponent hit you first, they'll remove either your board control element or your shooting element, and then you lose the fight from there.
This is defensive army.
This is defensive. This is reactive with the ability to do a ton of damage if your opponent messes up.
It interacts with you. You can't do anything about it with a very, very hard-hitting Forge Fiend in the beginning. Then it beta strikes you and has indirect fire to force interaction, and then it tries to play in waves at you.
Yep, and you have great scoring package for early on with Cypher, infiltrating, lone-opping, vecting your opponent, 10 cultists sticking objective running around, and then 3 chaos bikers doing secondaries.
I guess there's someone in the chat saying they don't like bikers. If you really hate bikers, I implore you to give them an honest shot. Cut the cultists, cut the bikers, put Changeling and Blue Scribes in. I think that's fine. Or you could even just cut the bikers for Changeling and have an awkward 20 points left.
Yeah. You could cut Cypher, Chaos Bikers, get a unit of 3 Flamers, the Changeling, and
all that
Scribes.
stuff is like side grades of itself.
Yeah.
I just really like the coming up and going down that the bikes have offered it.
Yep, they just do that repeatedly over and over and over again, and they're like a Calidus that's cheaper, kind of.
And tougher.
Can't access the whole board, tougher.
9 wounds is a real big deal.
Yeah.
That's it, everybody, though. Hope you enjoyed this session of Fix My List. I had a blast. I'm really enjoying Chaos these days in 10th edition. I'm thinking they're one of my most fun factions to play. And I get to run units like Hellbrutes and Chaos Bikes, and those things I've literally never seen competitive play ever.
Yeah, I'm excited for aggressive World Eaters lists like that one that we designed. Mm-hmm. And Death Guard, I'm excited to give people the best shot on the table we possibly can.
Absolutely, I'm super excited. So hopefully you enjoyed this, Dov, your Chaos Space Marine list. And then I know there was some members in the chat who were also working on some Chaos Space Marines. Chaos is awesome. Fix My List is awesome. Stay tuned for some more awesome Art of War content. We got Build a List tomorrow, where I believe, Jack, are you building a list?
No. I believe it is Quentin who is building a list.
Quentin, Q Money. So
I'll look up what army it is because it's changed a couple of times. Oh, it is Build a List. Harlequins, Richard and Quentin. Quentin's going to be building a Harlequins list to play into Richard.
Beautiful. So you can check that out tomorrow at 10 a.m. live on Eastern Time. We do a daily stream every single Monday through Friday live at Eastern Time. On Wednesdays, we play games in the afternoon. And, of course, we offer so much more content in the War Room for our subscribers. Both focus on helping you learn the game and become your best. We teach people how to get better at competitive Warhammer and enjoy their hobby more as excellent sportsmen. So if you're interested in doing that kind of thing, check out the link below. You can check out the War Room for a 3-day free trial of our amazing services. Really awesome, really easy. While you're down there, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And you can even check out all of our wonderful sponsors also in that description. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you later.
Bye-bye.